all the time. I never got that feeling of, we call it nigger rich, I shouldn't use that word probably. But my partner and some of the soups up there at the Hennessy building tapped me on the shoulder. Al, you've made it. You got it now. You're a millionaire. What are you going to do with all your money? And somehow I never know why, but it wasn't there. They robbed the pillar.
Yeah, that's a great story. That was basically an old mine you were going down, just trying to.
Yeah, the gem had been mined many years before, and the North Butte, like the Anaconda Company, was buying all the claims around them. And that was very important, even nowadays too, because all them lawsuits that Heinz inaugurated and all that, you didn't know if some of your veins would outcrop over there. It'd be nice if you could get that claim, in case that come
Sure.
up. You don't want somebody to come. So they bought the gem and the Jesse, and had complete control over them. And then they had a lawsuit with Tuolumne too on that same Jesse vein. The Jesse vein would come to the 400, it split like a Y, and one branch come up in the Tuolumne ground, and the other branch come up in the North Butte ground. And so they went to Tuolumne sued, so they went to court. And it sounds silly. They found it was so silly they settled out of court because obviously when those minerals come up and form a Y, they couldn't have filled one section because they'd be totally filled. How could they? They'd had to fill both at one time.
Yeah.
And so that ended that lawsuit. But that was some of them ridiculous lawsuits.
How far was the collar of the Jesse from the collar of the gem? How far apart were they, would you say? 100 yards or?
No, maybe 100 feet.
100 feet?
I can look at my maps and tell you exactly.
Oh, they were pretty close then.
They were pretty close. They were down below, and the Jesse was a separate mine. The North Butte bought it for the famous Jesse vein. The Jesse vein was one of the big veins for the North Butte. And another interesting fact that a lot of them don't know now, when they heard about the Speculator for sale, these two boys, Mr. John, what was his name at the power company too, not way back?
Ryan?
John Ryan, and what was the other lady? These two boys were raised in a copper town in Michigan, and they were nuts on mining. And as kids out of school and that, they even went down underground, and they knew a lot about mining. And they were partners, and then there was a new mine starting up in that area in Michigan, and these boys investigated and found out that it looked like it was going to be a good thing. So they got all the money they could raise. Apparently their families was rich, and they got their families and all their friends to buy stock. And sure enough, that company got down there, and their ore was rich, and the stockholders, and the boys cleaned up. They made a lot of money there. And then they got another mine in Colorado, and that made money.
Now, this first one they made the money was in Michigan, or was it the Jesse?
Michigan.
It was in Michigan.
And
okay.
then they heard about the Speculator mine for sale in Butte that could be bought. And so they come out, the two boys come out and they checked the spec, and they was really pleased because there was big veins opened up in the spec. They weren't down very deep, but they had a lot. And so they go back and they organized the North Butte Mining Company, and in the meantime they bought a lot of stock in the amalgamated with the government. And so they agreed Ryan would take president of the Anaconda Company, and I think was his name. He took president of the North Butte Company. Well, then the two decided they were making big money on dividends about merging, but they were foxy. They decided that they'd make more money by keeping the company separate. So the first thing they did, they made the Anaconda Company legal department be the legal department for the North Butte. The purchasing department for the Anaconda Company purchased for the North Butte, and buying these little outlying claims around. They used a different system. They didn't want no lawsuits. They worked it this way. If that little ore vein they bought over at the Creases could be mined easier from the North Butte, they give it North Butte. This is Ryan and his buddy, and that way no lawsuits was formed.
Yeah.
And if it could be mined cheaper from the Anaconda Badger or Diamond, they give them it. And so then the two companies really worked right up until the fire. They're going to bust it apart then.
Well, where'd Largy McDonald fit into all that?
Well, Largy sold the claims to the boys organized the North Butte Mining Company, which bought the claims from Largy.
I see. Okay. Well, when you got the gym, what did it consist of? It was 700 feet deep, but what kind of
Well, in the meantime, when the North Butte bought it, as formed and bought they needed air. They were coming out here, they were exploring the ground. They were finding a lot of big veins out. And the Jesse from the Speculator, they're going out here to find these big veins, and they're getting too far out. They needed air. You can't. They found out early in the game, contrary to what some of your people think about the bad air. They soon found out that they could spend several $1,000s and make a hell of a lot more by good air, that men could only work so long in bad air. And so they went to work and they were putting them big fans in. The company put in, I don't know how many, the North Butte said the gym, the 700, so they raised from the 1,600. They come up with a raise and come right under the North Butte gym shaft. By the way, it's interesting there to know about how precise them surveyors was, because here they had the Speculator here and the gym over there. And when you start out underground, just figure, go down your basement and just figure how you make a direct connection to Montana Tech.
Yeah.
And they had to have surveys right down, because if you'd have left the Speculator shaft an eighth of an inch out of line, you'd have gone right by the gym shaft.
So they raised up from the 1,600 to the Spec?
To the 700 the gym.
Okay.
I saw where they made the connections. And then later on they raised up from the 18 and then the 20 and finally the 2,200.
So the gym became an air shaft?
Air shaft. And they put them concrete buildings, I'll show you. They put them all in concrete because they were afraid of fire. It was a good thing they did too in the fire. And they made living conditions very greatly over there. Then they put another shaft to Rainbow way out there. They connected to it on the 20. And North Butte had one of the best ventilated shafts in Butte at that time.
Well, what kind of surface workings did you have at the gym when you were to
When I was there, they had concrete buildings. They built a concrete engine room and compressed room, which I'll show you the picture of. And they had a concrete house for the house, the electric motor for the fan. And then they had a series of deals there. And Anaconda had them too. All them fans in them days had them. They had a series of steel doors and that were like in the night of the fire. The first thing they went down and shut the gem fan and made it into a downcast, blowing air down. And they made the Rainbow downcast. And then the higher come in downcast. The idea was to confine the smoke and fire in the Granite Mountain shaft, and that was really making the Granite Mountain shaft burn faster but the smoke was coming through the granite, but it was giving a chance for men to get around. So the capability of reversing the fans paid off in that area. And I always figured that I might find a guy in the 700, the gem, dead man, because you got to think that a lot of men, you don't know what they do in the fire. Any guy climbing up the gem shaft and the good air coming down, well, at 3 o'clock in the morning, all the big shots decided that there could be no one alive down there, and they'd better put out the fire, so they had hoses ready to throw the water down the shaft. Then they went down and reversed the fan. So if you was climbing up the gem shaft, when they reversed the fan, then you'd get the smoke. You might have got in one of our levels, and dropped dead. But if there was, I never found them.
Was that a straight climb up there, or was it?
Oh yeah, it was straight climb.
Was just one ladder tacked
to the other. Gee, when we took the gem first, we had no money. Still don't. But so we climbed, and my wife, his partner's wife, we lived at the Tuolumne for a while. We had our home in Butte, and then at noon, we had a rig, this windlass rigged up. I don't know if you know what they are. Just crank on them, and we had a big old carbide can as a bucket. And Eunice and Maxine would put our lunch in there with some Kool-Aid. That's the first time I drank so much Kool-Aid. And they'd lower that down to us on the 300, and we'd have our lunch. And then at quitting time, Harry and I'd put our empty lunch things back in this bucket, and we'd throw our coats in and our drill steel, because that's a 300 straight climb. You didn't want any heavy coats on.
So you didn't have any place to rest or anything?
No, well, we did put some lagging across here and there, but it was a straight climb.
Was it up just one shaft or two shafts?
Two compartments.
Two compartments. You climb up the service compartment?
We was in the service, and we climbed up there, and then what happened there was almost the same thing that happened when your relative was there, because this one night after now, we put an electric hoist now at the gym. And the Currys was our partner. And this night, Dave was running the hoist. And I was down with the men on the 700. That's where we was working for that big ore body. And we're just getting into it. And Jesus, this one young man I had, he went out with a full car, pushed the car out to Sunday. You would put a car on the cage and then take an empty off. He come back in with no empty, and he was out of breath. See, we're in about maybe 700 feet from the gem shaft. And he says, Al, you better come out, there's something wrong. He said, the wagon across the shaft, we had big timbers across the shaft so that we didn't want them to fall down or lose anything.
Yeah.
And he said, they're gone. And he said, the lights are out. Well, I put electric lights on the stations. And so I went out, and I tried ringing, tried the phone, no phone. So there's nothing to do. Rupert got a 700-foot straight climb. So I'm climbing up, and I get about past what would be the 100, and I look ahead, and there's a mine car across the goddamn shaft. It was at an angle. I didn't like that either. I wondered. And I know what happened then. David pulled her up in the wheel, and the car had fallen down. And so I had to do some chinning myself to get around that goddamn mine car. That's dangerous, too, because you could have fallen down the other shaft. I got around the mine car and managed to get on top out of breath. And here's Dave just getting ready, like your foot, to come down to see, which both was stupid, because it's just another one to get out. When the cage was gone, there was no use him climbing down, just one more to climb off. And so Dave, as soon as I get my breath, I says, get a pair of pliers, Dave, and come out. And I says, splice these two phone wires. I could see where the two phone wires we had come from the end room, it split when part of the gallows frame went. And I said, splice them now. I said, ring. We kept ringing the 700, and they answered down there, and I told them what was wrong. Told them where the car was, and I told whatchamacallit, the young kid, I says, now, I kept warning him, now, you wait for Albert, I said, because he's up in yours, and keep up with it. Don't you climb ahead of him. And he said, yeah. So, Jesus, the result was our old man finally showed up on top. Where's the kid? Still down there? Jesus, that kid, he was going to Montana Tech. We had a hell of a time getting him out. He was out of breath. Here, the old guy with the partly miner's gone, he come up on, and I was worried about him being left down there. And there I thought the same thing that your folk had. That man had no more sense to climb down, because there's nothing he could do. He had made a mistake. He either was drunk or something happened, because he pulled it into the wheel and he wrecked the gallows frame. Naturally, the owner's not going to be very happy at that, because that's a big deal building out a gallows frame. And you lose all that rock, and those men, you'll have to pay them when they climb out. And so the best thing he could have done was stay there and try and get help communication somewhere else, because climbing down he could do no good.
Now, in those days, they would